Thanks so much. Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday. I am Courtney Fairchild. I am the President and CEO of Global Services. And just a little bit about us so you understand why we're here to talk about GSA schedules today. Global Services is just about 25 years old. We'll be 25 years old in January. And we specialize in helping companies obtain and maintain GSA schedules, as well as other federal proposal development. In our almost 25 years, we've helped over actually now 3,000 GSA schedule holders with awards in excess of $20 billion in contracts earned. So the goal today is to tell you a little bit more. I'm assuming that those on the line either have a schedule already or are planning on getting a schedule. And I want to talk about the compliance and success tips that we've put together for you. I think one of the things that happens is that everybody wants to jump on a GSA schedule. You get, as soon as you register in SAM, you get those telemarketers that call you and tell you about the $40 billion that goes through the GSA schedule program, which is actually all true. However, the key to this is that getting on a GSA schedule doesn't make your phone ring, right? There are thousands and thousands of contractors that have a GSA multiple award schedule. So what we want to talk about today are the two things that I think are most important. How do you keep compliant? What are the things that I've signed up for most importantly when I have been awarded a GSA schedule contract, and what are my responsibilities? And how do I increase my visibility or increase my chances for success at getting work through the GSA schedule? Having said that, I want to make sure that I point out, excuse me, that it is imperative that you proactively market your GSA schedule, right? As I said, your phone is not going to ring. And while it's a great contract closure tool, it's important that you work the program and that you drive business to and through your awarded master GSA schedule contract, because you can have the past performance and the experience to get on this contract and do $0 of business. If you don't do at least $25,000 in your first year of being awarded a GSA schedule, you can lose it. And then $25,000 every year thereafter. So let's get into what the GSA multiple award schedule is and sort of what it has become over the last couple of years, because there have been some pretty big changes. You're going to hear me refer to the GSA multiple award schedule throughout this entire presentation. And it will be as we refer to the one consolidated schedule now, which I will also talk a little bit more about. So let's do a quick overview. When we say what is a GSA schedule, what are we talking about? The GSA schedule is, in a very technical term, the catalog or listing of contractors that have been awarded the multiple award schedule by GSA and is available for use by all federal agencies. So when I think about what the GSA schedule is, I think of an electronic catalog, right? You can log on, and I'll give you the link later, to the Schedules library and see every single awarded contractor, their services, their pricing, and everything that's been awarded. So it is the GSA schedule, really is the listing of everyone that's been awarded. Your GSA schedule contract will have a specific number, and we often refer to those as our GSA schedules. And it is those things that you've been awarded, those products, services, and special item numbers that you've been awarded. The goal of the GSA program is to mirror commercial buying practices so that GSA is targeting your lowest and most favored customer rates for product and service. And they are, most importantly, past performance based. So GSA schedules have very little to do with your abilities, right? It's not about what you can do, but what you have done over the past 2 years. You may only be awarded those special item numbers, those products, and those services for which you have past performance and billings. Lastly, the reason to want a GSA schedule is that it facilitates faster and easier government procurement for those ordering agencies that like to buy off the schedule. There's over 10 million commercial items and services that can be purchased from over 15,000 companies on the GSA schedule. That also means there's a fair amount of competition, and you have to be really aware of what it is that you're listing and how you're selling off of this contract in order to be successful. The multiple award schedule has one set of terms and conditions. These are what I believe to be the most important things to be aware of about the MAS, or the multiple award schedule. They're all government-wide contracts with worldwide scope. That means that any federal ordering agency can buy off the contract, and you will choose whether it's domestic or worldwide in terms of delivery for products and services. One of the best things about the GSA schedule is that they're open season solicitations. That means that there is not a due date for your offer. That is, there are very few things that are open season in the federal government. The great news is that there's no due date, and the terrible news is there's no due date. For those of you that have been waiting to submit, it tends to be the thing that slides to the back because there's no date. You're going to have to give yourself a very real, if you haven't already and you want to submit, you have to treat it like any other proposal and give it some due dates internally. The GSA schedule is an initial 5-year period of performance with 3 5-year follow-on options. That makes it a total of 20 years, which is called an evergreen contract. And there is no contract that can be longer than that in accordance with the federal acquisition regulations. Once you hit your 20 years, you're allowed to submit a new offer under the streamlined acquisition, and you'll be able to start over. But this particular contract number will end after 20 years. There are no selling caps on the multiple award schedule. So you can put as much business as an ordering agency is willing to award through it. And there are no SAM.gov posting requirements. So you're not going to see the stuff that's going through the GSA schedule. You may see on eBuy if you are awarded that special item number and have a multiple award schedule. But those that don't do not see the RFQs, that request for quotations, that are going through the GSA schedule program or are purchased off of GSA Advantage directly for products. The GSA schedule requires that there are at least 3 requests for quotations or RFQs, and allows the ordering agency to make a best value award. That's really significant because it's not necessarily lowest price. The best value could be your certification. The best value could be that you've done some initial work and you're the logical follow-on. It could be your location. It could be any number of things that you put into that RFQ that make you and differentiate you as the best value. The GSA schedule has pricing that's already fair and reasonable in accordance with the federal acquisition regulations. The point of getting awarded the master contract is that GSA has determined your rates, the ceiling rates, is fair and reasonable. And then you're allowed to spot discount when using the GSA schedule to ordering agencies. So GSA sets the ceiling, you are going to set your floor. And we'll talk more about pricing in terms of compliance, because that's probably the most complicated thing for a GSA schedule. There is a 0.75 or 0.75% industrial funding fee. That's the price that you add in to your pricing when you're getting awarded your ceiling rates. And then you report either quarterly or monthly, depending on if your offer was a transactional data reporting offer or not. And then you are making reporting and then making the payment of that 0.75 back to GSA, either quarterly or monthly, depending on how your contract was originally awarded. Those are the terms and conditions that apply to all products and services schedules. Now we all have the very same terms and conditions on our contract. The solicitation is a single solicitation. So what am I talking about? GSA used to have 24 different solicitations that had different scopes of work. The multiple award schedules were up to 24. There were services. You'll know the IT schedule 70 or the professional services schedule or facilities maintenance and management or any of the product schedules. So GSA said, you know what, this is really complicated for ordering agencies. We want to create one single multiple award schedule that lists everybody that is awarded under it. The benefits of making one particular schedule was, as I said, to improve customer service and give easier access to buyers, which hopefully will increase the total sales. The single storefront also allows for a single set of terms and conditions for purchasers. For those that had multiple GSA schedule contracts, because they did work in multiple of the types of work or products, it was complicated because the terms and conditions were not the same for each. So the idea here is to lessen the administrative burden for you and for GSA. And even more importantly, they reduced the number of special item numbers from 900 to about 300. And the idea there being that there shouldn't be so much duplication of either product or services. You should have a very good understanding of where your products and services should belong, because now it's based on the North American Industrial Classification Standard codes. We moved from a very bizarre nomenclature that didn't make much sense to ordering agencies to using NAICS-based codes for special item numbers, so that ordering agencies are purchasing much like they would off of anything else, and they should have a better understanding of how to get you that information. So GSA, as I said, consolidated these schedules. The first was in phase one, and phase one was to develop the new terms and conditions, and they put out that solicitation in 2019, so that all new offers automatically were in the queue for only the new consolidated schedule. Then existing contractors in phase two were issued mass modifications to accept the new terms and conditions. And we are now in phase three, where anyone that has or had multiple GSA schedule contract numbers is tasked to consolidate them into a single contract. This is far more complicated than it seemed when GSA started. They're not just automatically consolidated. You have to do modifications to add the special item numbers from existing contracts to the one that you want to prevail. And your pricing has to be reproven. Your commercial sales practices and pricing has to be reproven when you do that. So it's a little bit more complicated. If you have any existing BPAs, you can't get rid of the old contracts. And likely, if you only have one BPA, if you've got two contracts and one of them has a BPA, you're going to want the one that has the BPA to be the prevailing contract that doesn't go away. You cannot exercise an option for a BPA if the backbone contract is gone. So be very conscientious of your contract actions when you're making your selection for the prevailing GSA schedule contract. The GSA schedule sales, this is an interesting note. So here we have the total sales, and what you'll notice, the large categories are up on the left. These follow category management. GSA, when they realigned the new special item numbers, they also moved to category management in terms of their classification. So these are the large categories in the sales from 18 through 21. Look at how much we grew this program in the last 4 years, from $31 billion to almost $40 billion, and we expect 2022 to end higher as well. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that GSA really did make it easier for ordering agencies to understand how to purchase and where to purchase. The other is that they've made it easier for you as a contractor to add other products and services to your existing contract without having to get a brand new contract vehicle. So that's increased sales as well. And then the obvious is that during the pandemic, we have a heavy reliance on existing contract vehicles that are already in place. So you'll see that pop up from 19 to 20, and then 20 to 21 as a lot of the pandemic spending through existing contract vehicles. It's also worth noting that something like 40% of baby boomer contracting officers, certified contracting officers, 1102s, have or will retire within a 5-year period. So that means that ordering agencies don't have the staff in place to be able to run full procurements. And that's why you're seeing an uptick in not just the GSA schedule, but other both GWACs and government-wide contracts, because they're an easier way to purchase if guided correctly. So let's talk about some of the compliance. Contract reporting has to be done through the Federal Acquisition or the Sales Reporting Portal, FASSRP, Sales Reporting Portal. And that is where you both report your sales as well as pay your industrial funding fee. For those of you that have not participated in the transactional data reporting, you report and pay quarterly. For those of you that submitted for special item numbers and became a part of the pilot program for transactional data reporting, you will pay quarterly, but you report monthly and by line item invoice detail. So the thing about transactional data reporting is that GSA is trying to get big data and better procurement data on actual prices for products and services. So they're asking, and the trade-off is that you don't have to include the price reduction clause if you have included transactional data reporting for your contract, which, by the way, is only available for, I think, 8 special item numbers or so right now. They're talking about opening it up before the end of the year if you want to take part. But what the trade-off is, you've got to provide your line item invoice data. So if your pricing is all over the place and you are invoicing ordering agencies very specific line items, be it services at time and materials rates or products, GSA is trying to glean that data, right? They're trying to figure out how to make better purchasing decisions. So there's a trade-off. There's a great, we're going to go through a bunch of pricing information that does not apply for transactional data reporting. And as I get into that, it might look a little bit more appealing once it opens later this year. The report is due 30 days from the end of the quarter, and so is the payment of the industrial funding fee. That's not the last day of the month. People often make the mistake of considering that the end of the month is when this is due, but it's actually 30 days. And the payment has to be made by then. So if you're making a payment in a way that on a credit card or something that requires an extra day, you need to start this earlier. I usually tell people don't ever wait past the 25th of the month to make that report, whether it's quarterly or monthly. I try to aim for the 25th so I can make sure my payment clears as well. And then lastly, for anyone that it would be a large business, they have small business subcontracting reporting requirements associated with their contract. The most complicated and the thing that people tend to ignore in terms of compliance for an awarded GSA schedule contract are the constraints on pricing. We just talked a little bit about the transactional data reporting. So if you're TDR, the next couple of slides will not apply to you, but very few people are or understand it. So the idea behind a GSA schedule is that GSA sets out to obtain better than the best price you offer for the same product or service to any customer, right? Their goal is most favored customer pricing, which is the lowest pricing that you offer for a project manager or for that monitor or whatever the product is. Pricing that is not determined to be highly competitive will not be awarded and will not be considered fair and reasonable. So GSA has all of these vendors on contract, and for services, they have a database that they do research on education, experience, and title to say, okay, where do you fall compared to all of the other GSA Schedule contractors? If you're way out of range, even if that is your best price, they're not going to award it. So you want to be able to do your own research as well. And I will give you some links to be able to do all of those things. The GSA schedules, as I just said, are targeted on the most favored customer. The most favored customer is defined as the person or category, the company or category of companies, class of customers that receive your best pricing. And the basis of award for your GSA schedule is used to track the discount relationship between your most favored customer or the one that you name as the basis of award and GSA. It's not always the same as the most favored customer because it is possible that you only have government clients, that you only do federal prime work. In that case, your most favored customer is the federal government. The basis of award for price reduction cannot be the federal government. It is excluded from the price reduction clause, which I will talk about in just a little bit. But just to get a sense that usually your MFC and your BOA, or most favored customer, and basis of award are exactly the same. That is not always the case, and it's a possibility that it's not. So just be aware that that is in play. So I'm going to try and take you through an example so you can understand the most favored customer and pricing strategy so that I can then explain the price reduction clause and what your compliance behind this pricing really is. So who is my most favored customer? I just told you that the most favored customer is defined as my lowest price. So I have, in this example, I'm a services contractor. And I am talking about the labor category of program manager. I have billed program manager at $150 when I was working as a prime to federal agency A. I billed $125 when I was working as a prime to federal agency B. And as a subcontractor to prime contractor A, I billed $105. And as in another subcontract, I billed $100. In this scenario, my most favored customer is commercial customers, because when I work as a subcontractor, GSA defines, this is a very important note, it does not matter who the end user is, it matters who I invoice, right? So if I am invoicing a prime contractor, that $105 and $100 rates, that's considered commercial work by GSA. Very important note. So my most favorite customer rate is $100, and my category of customer is most likely all commercial customers, or at the very least, prime federal contractors, depending on how you price and how you've named it. So continuing with this example, the most favored customer versus the GSA rate. So my program manager, I showed GSA that $100 was the GSA commercial floor, right? So GSA established, they saw from the previous slide, they saw, I'm gonna go back one, they saw that my most favored customer rate is $100. So GSA says, great, that is your commercial floor, meaning the best rate that you give to any commercial company for a program manager. And we would like, GSA, a 10% discount. So your GSA rate is $90. This is what we've negotiated. I will tell you that you should not negotiate 10%. I've used that for an example here because it's easier math, but we usually try to stay between no more than 1% to 5% discount when we're negotiating. So that 10% is the awarded discount relationship between my commercial floor and my GSA ceiling. So GSA set those ceiling rates, and I've said I'm not going to go below $100 for program manager. That means that GSA customers can get $90 and below, and commercial customers can get anything from $100 and above. This red box, nobody except the federal government as a prime not using GSA should be priced, because all other customers have to stay above the commercial floor and GSA has to stay below the ceiling rate. The only people that can get this red box pricing, the 10% difference in the middle, is when you are pricing as a prime to the federal government. That $85 that just popped up represents the spot discount you might give to an ordering agency purchasing off the GSA schedule. This is relevant because when you're setting up your pricing, know that as you go to bid your GSA schedule contract, the ordering agencies are seeking even further discounts. So GSA wants better than your best rate, right? They're negotiating a discount, and then the ordering agencies are negotiating discounts. We are in a very interesting time of inflation, and these are becoming harder and harder to work if you let GSA over negotiate with you. The other really important thing to notice is that if we go back for a moment to this most favored customer slide, there was a way for me to define, because I get to define my GSA labor categories. I would have defined a program manager, maybe 1, 2, or 1, 2, and 3, with differing education, experience, and functional responsibilities that make me able to have maybe 100, at least 2. I would go for 100, 125, and 150 if I had a PM 1, 2, and 3, as long as that's the functional responsibilities really differed or the education experience between those contracts. But we want to be able to substantiate any labor category with the price, and rather than just falling to the bottom, because that's what we have to do for every labor category, if you are careful at how you define your products or services, you may be able to isolate some of these price points. So that's a good tip when you are working on changing your invoicing now to be able to add other labor categories or products in the future. The reason that we've gone through this entire exercise is to explain and talk about the price reduction clause. For those of you that are not transactional data reporting, remember that the price reduction clause is a part of the terms and conditions. And it says that the relationship that you negotiated with GSA between your most favored customer pricing and GSA pricing, that 10% discount that we talked about, has to be maintained for the life of the contract. If your GSA pricing goes up, your most favored customer pricing has to go up. And any change in the commercial pricing that results in a disturbance of that relationship has to be notified to GSA within 15 days, and you must lower your pricing accordingly. I'm going to actually show you what that looks like, because I think that's a lot of words that don't make sense. Back to our program manager example here. We had $100 that was our commercial floor and awarded at $90. I now have an opportunity that's coming to me. And Lockheed Martin wants to give us a very big subcontract, but they're requiring that our program manager be billed at $95 an hour. That's a violation, assuming that these are the same labor category. The program manager is equivalent to what's on GSA schedule. That's a violation of the price reduction clause. Within 15 days, I have to say, GSA, my new most favored customer rate for program manager is 5% lower, which is $95 an hour. And you have to give an equal percent decrease in your GSA ceiling rate. So that $90 gets reduced by 5%, which brings you to $85.50. That is how you disclose and do a price reduction for your GSA schedule. It is on you to determine whether or not it is important enough business to trigger that price reduction, right? Is the subcontract I took worth this decrease that I'm going to make on GSA? I ask that, and I also point out that there may be other ways to have different labor categories so that you know, again, level 1, 2, and 3, or 1 and 2, and I might have been able to bill a level 1 versus a level 2 and not have this issue. So how you define, I think that's another point. Companies really don't take the time to consider the differentiation and how they define labor categories in a way that will help them manage this compliance on the back end. It is crucial that you are looking at all of the work that is not federal prime, and that you're actually putting a cover sheet on all of those bids to map or not map to GSA, right? So I have a subcontract. I'm going to throw an Excel spreadsheet on every subcontract that we're doing that has my GSA labor categories, and then whatever is equivalent in this subcontract that I'm accepting, to verify that we are at or above the most favored customer rate, or to make a note about why that category really isn't mappable or applicable, so it does not count. A good example for this program manager would be if I have defined on GSA program manager as having a bachelor's in 10 years of experience, but the subcontract where I'm billing $95 has written into the contract a bachelor's in 8 years, it is not a mappable equivalent, and I could bill the $95 regardless of the title being the same if the requirements were different without triggering the price reduction clause. My tip here is that it is easiest to do this while you are bidding. That's when all of these things become readily apparent and people are really familiar with the opportunity. It can take 15 minutes to do the mapping spreadsheet and leave them in all of the files, because when you get audited for your contractor assistance visits, which you should be having annually if you're doing $100,000 or more, these are not things you want to have to create backwards. It makes those CAVs really painful. So that's a great tip, right? Whoever is involved in pricing, you should have a single quality control check that makes sure that you are not violating the price reduction clause. If you happen to violate the price reduction clause and you don't notify GSA, in this example, for instance, and you are, this is found during a contractor assistance visit, what GSA would say is, we're going to have you pay back this 5% difference for every hour worked from the time that you billed $95 to current. So if you're using Program Manager through your GSA schedule, you would owe every client 5% back for every hour that was worked. And that is what we're obviously trying to avoid. Not to beat the drum, but the transactional data reporting is this is what takes away the price reduction clause. So if you are able and want to participate in TDR, which I said will probably open for all special item numbers before the end of the year, you should think about this. If this is very onerous for your company and you need the flexibility to price any which way commercially, TDR becomes much more attractive. The only real downside to TDR is that you are reporting line item invoice, and we are not absolutely certain what is long-term going to happen to this data. Will it be, if I, spot discounting when billing for Program Manager every time, is my contracting officer going to gain access to this data and then say to me later, you're always giving a discount, so it's pretty standard, and try to negotiate my rates downward? I have not seen that yet, and they seem to be protecting the data. But as administrations change, that's ultimately the concern. If you are billing CLIN or fixed price invoices, even for GSA, this data becomes irrelevant for you because they're not going to see your hourly rates that were part of the proposal. You're only reporting what's on the invoice. Or if you have very standardized pricing, then there's no concern to you either. Okay, so that is really the compliance section, the things that I think people ignore the most. And now I'm going to get into a couple of tips. Yasmin, do we have any questions before I push forward?
No, not yet, Courtney. This is great stuff. I just want to remind everybody who's joined us since we started that you can type out your questions for Courtney in the chat box.
Great, thank you. Just want to make sure. Okay, now let's talk about some of the things that you can do. I think, maybe a lot of people on the call have a GSA schedule, maybe haven't made a sale yet or having trouble gaining traction. So I want to talk about some of the things that you can do to maximize your opportunities once you're on schedule. The first is to make yourself more marketable. There's a couple of ways to do that. And when I say marketable, I really mean seen and understood by federal agencies. I recently had a client say to me that they didn't put much time into their website because federal contractors don't look at website, or federal ordering agencies don't look at websites. One, that is not true. And two, it is really important nowadays because I told you that all of these ordering agencies are losing their procurement staff. They are using artificial intelligence and bots to scrape both GSA Advantage, SAM, eBuy, and your individual websites for particular requests for information or RFIs. So you need to make sure that your expertise and strengths are on your price list, that you have the right keywords that an AI bot that you want to be found. So which ordering agencies are you marketing and what kind of terms do they use? And you want to make sure you get these into your GSA authorized price list. There are certain things in a format you have to follow, but you are allowed to put on page 2 an overview of the company that could contain these words or description of the types of services. It's especially relevant for product descriptions that are going to be scraped on GSA Advantage. How do I get in contact with you? Is your logo and your graphics, are all of these things there? And does your homepage, how many of you on this call have your GSA identifier, both logo and a link to your price list on GSA Advantage or GSA eLibrary located on your homepage, right? You should have a contract section. You should have your GSA schedule contract number, and you should have that hot link to your very specific GSA eLibrary listing in the GSA eLibrary. So that if I am an ordering agency and I'm on your website, not only do I know what you do, I need to know that I can actually get to you. I need to know any of the contract vehicles. And this is true not only for GSA. You should have a link if you have other access points or contract vehicles, then you should absolutely make sure that all your contracts are listed. The posted GSA format follows a very specific clause as a part of the terms and conditions. It's IFSS 600. It changed recently. So if you have to repost your price list, there's a couple of format changes. You may get a rejection or two, but they will tell you what you need to do, and they'll send you a sample FSS 600 so you understand. As I said, you can add other company information, but just know that ultimately the procurement officer, the PCO that you deal with for GSA has to approve your price list. So they're subjectively going to make a determination on anything beyond the requirements for FSS 600. I am seeing a note in the chat. Is there an opportunity to renegotiate GSA ceiling prices? Melanie, I can tell you that it is almost impossible to renegotiate the ceiling prices, except for the fact that through escalation. So depending on, there's 3 different ways that you set your escalation for GSA. One is based on a market price list. One is including a specific indicator or indices that you will match on the date of award, annually from award. And the third is a set escalation. If those are all in play and you've already negotiated, I believe it's easier to add in different products or services, different versions, levels, or types of labor categories than it is to fight with GSA about trying to raise your pricing. This is one of the reasons that people hire companies like Global Services, because companies will come to me and say, we did not negotiate well, and now this is an unusable contract. And GSA has no reason to want to renegotiate with you once you've accepted lower pricing. The one caveat and exception to this is currently, GSA has a public policy in place that says you're allowed to go in for more escalations and exceeding what was currently anywhere from 5 to 10%, depending on your special item number cap annually because of the inflation. They do understand that you may need to raise your pricing. So you're going to have to do a special economic price adjustment. The only note that I would make on that, Melanie, is that you still have the price reduction clause in play. So let's say the GSA gave me a 10% escalation on my GSA rates, just a one-time additional or 5%, whatever it is. I still have to have that 10% discount, if that's what I negotiated, between my most favored customer and GSA rates. So I can't take that escalation from GSA until I've made sure that I'm raising all of my other non-federal contract rates, because the minute I bill something that is less than 10% higher than my GSA rate, I will have violated the price reduction. So it's great that they understand that prices went up, but they did not ease the burden for price reduction clause. So you're going to have to lag while you raise your rates. And those of you that are working as subcontractors, that's really hard to do right now. The primes are not anymore, and maybe even less willing to increase your rates where you have already negotiated them. So I think that's the quagmire that people are in. If you were transactional data reporting, you wouldn't have to worry about that, and you could just do the price increase. So every time I say these things, I think that the transactional data reporting gets more and more attractive. The Schedule Z library is your best source of information, both for ordering agencies and for you. Here's the link. Everyone that's awarded a GSA schedule contract is listed in the e-library. So are their prices for both product and services. You can do research. Let's say you want to add a new special item number. You want to get through a real understanding of what's the competition? What are the types of labor categories? Am I going to be price competitive? If I'm selling product, that's even more important. If I get these things on schedule, am I going to sell any of them if other people have pricing that is lower than mine at the ceiling level? So do your market research and figure out what are the special item numbers that I might be missing, that I do have past performance or sales in that are not on my contract today. What is my competition? What does that pricing look like? It's also really important that you keep your information current. If I'm an ordering agency and you have the wrong address listed, and by the way, to update your company name or address, you have to first update it in SAM, and then that goes through on an eMod. But my contract administrator left and I haven't made the change on the price list or the e-library. Now I've got outdated information and no one's going to be able to contact me. I think that the administrative responses for GSA, when we take over, we do maintenance of GSA schedule contracts. And the first thing we do is have to go in and update all the points of contact, phone numbers, get rid of people that aren't there anymore, add people that are, because those are the things that no one's doing in eMod. In order to keep up to date, you have to get into eMod. You have to have your contract administrator with access. Here's the link. You do additions, deletions, changes, EPAs, the economic price adjustments, adding any special item numbers, adding labor categories, adding pricing, adding products. You have to have an FAS ID to access this, and that person, not only do I have to have an ID, but I have to be identically listed on the GSA contract and eMod. So that's how it's a second factor authentication that's linked to my email. When I log in, for instance, to eMod, I've got hundreds and hundreds of contracts that I have access to because they're all tied to my same ID. And I've been authorized exactly as my name and that email, which gives me access to every single one of them. You need to make sure, this is the other thing, people get awarded and they stop even thinking about the contract. And then all of a sudden a bid comes out and they realize they don't have labor categories, products, whatever those things are, current, right? They let their product line get out of date. They haven't added the 10 categories that they now have billing for that they didn't when they originally got awarded. And they don't have enough to put in for these bids. This contract will be useless to you if you don't nurture it. If you don't feed water and keep it up to date, this will not serve you. You have to make sure your posted price list is up to date, that your products and services in the Schedules Input Program, or SIP, is up to date. And remember that mods take 3 to 4 months to process. So if you want to add a new special item number, it's not going to be for tomorrow. So you need to do these things proactively to keep your contract up to date. You can't sell what's not listed on your contract, right? We have to make sure that you have what you need to be successful. On GSA Advantage, here's the link to Advantage, is really more of a product. I think of eBuy as the services portal and Advantage as the product portal, although your services price lists are also listed in Advantage. But it's the online database for awarded products and services, and the government does searches, right? They do product searches, they perform market research, they look at pricing, and they directly place orders for the things that are listed and at the price and terms and conditions on GSA Advantage. Contractors use Advantage to do the kinds of research that I was talking about on the eLibrary. Research your competition, decide what are the most productive lines of business that you should be listing. That should be based on your probability of success. How many contractors? What is my competition? What is the pricing? Go and look up the sales for that special item number, or even that contractor. You are able to do that in the schedule sales query, which I believe I'll give you the link in just a minute. But you can see how much revenue is going through any single contract. You can search it by special item number. There's a lot of different ways to do research to make sure that you are making the right business decisions. And this is how you're going to sell to the federal marketplace. So for product-oriented catalogs, make sure you have the right products as they're searching keywords. People think that the product description is a throwaway. Your contracting officer almost doesn't care what that product description is, but it is very important for being able to search and find the product when I'm on GSA Advantage if I'm an ordering agency. The eBuy system is what I talked about, the corollary for services. Here's again the link. This is where RFQs, or requests for quotations, get listed for services. And it is the easiest way for an ordering agency to be able to post because it allows for maximum participation. I might only, as an ordering agency, submit this to 3 different contractors for bid, but everyone that has an awarded special item number can see every RFQ that comes out in eBuy under that special item number. If I don't have the special item number, I have no access to those RFQs, right? So I don't, just because I'm awarded a GSA schedule, I don't get to see everything that comes out under the entire program, only those special item numbers that I've been awarded. That becomes really important because those AI bots, as I talked about, are doing RFI research, and GSA has their own market research as a service that they are giving away for free to ordering agencies to help them do RFIs, but they only query a specific SIN or multiple SINs under the GSA schedule program. GSA is trying to do the market research for free to drive users, federal agencies, to use their contract vehicle so that they're successful. If you don't have a special item number, you won't be included on the RFI and ultimately the RFQ. The eBuy system allows you to respond directly on eBuy, which every RFQ is different and requires different things, but you'll be able to post those and to see everything that is in your special item number, whether you had it on your contract or not. One of the things that people don't know is that you can improve your visibility on eBuy. There are certain special item numbers that have something called a subgroup. And this is specifically within the eBuy profile. So you as an administrator have the ability to choose different subgroups. If you have the last bullet here lists the special item numbers that have subgroups. Cybersecurity services is one of them. I'm just looking through the old MOBIS 541611, which is business and financial services, engineering. All of these have subgroups that I think most people ignore. It's really important that you go in, you're self-certifying, and we said log into your vendor profile, click on modify subgroups, and select any subgroup. This is a self-certification. You can have as many as you need or want that you have the ability to do. But this is important because when I am an ordering agency on eBuy, I might only search a subgroup. So anyone that's ignored the subgroups altogether won't come up in my search and won't receive my RFQ. So be sure if you have any of the special item numbers listed on the bottom that you are logging into eBuy and making those determinations. I talked about the Schedule Sales Query. I've given you the link here. It's called Schedule Sales Query Plus now, and it's the online portal for historical GSA sales data. You can look at how much is being sold through any single special item number. You can do it by large category. You can search your competitors' revenue to see how they're doing. If you have a particular competitor that's selling a lot, right, is doing a lot of revenue, you can then go back to the e-library and see what do they have listed? What is their success accredited to? Is it product? Is it service? And how can you also try to take part in some of that success? Look at the sales trends over the years. I put up a sales slide earlier to demonstrate the pretty extreme growth in the last couple of years of this program. There's a lot of great reasons to want to be on the GSA schedule, but only if you intend to work it. The other thing that I want to say that I don't think I've said yet today is the only reason to have a GSA schedule is because you have an ordering agency that wants to use it, that utilizes the multiple award schedule for purchase. So if you don't have a schedule yet, make sure you're doing the research to think about who is your end user and how do they buy. And you can do that research on SAM.gov as well, right? This is the government contractor registration site. You cannot be a federal contractor and not have a profile on SAM.gov. You have to maintain that annually if you have a GSA schedule. It also allows for all of the former FPDS or Federal Procurement Data Service reports are now on SAM.gov. It's all in the same place. So you can research competitor GSA schedule contract numbers, for instance, to find out who's buying off. The schedule sales query is going to tell you how much revenue runs through the program. It doesn't tell you who's doing the buying. So you can cross-reference that in SAM to figure out where your competitors are doing their GSA schedule sales. It's unfortunate, but you do have to actually log into both systems to put those two things together. The other thing, and this is a great tip, both for SAM and eBuy, when ordering agencies are in the middle of a procurement, they can't really have a conversation with you that is specific to you, right? They have to actually have questions and answers and make sure that they're being fair and reasonable. But what you can do is use both SAM and eBuy to build a Rolodex. You now have points of contact and information on ordering agencies and specific people that buy the kinds of products and services you sell. This is a great way to build a list, to create a contact list, to get in touch with those procurement staff outside of active procurement, to be able to introduce your capabilities and ask if they have any upcoming similar opportunities, or if they're aware within their agency or even outside of similar opportunities. Right? So you need to be able to make, I think it's a real mistake to believe that federal ordering and federal procurement is still not relationship based. And you need to make those relationships at trade shows, You need to make sure that you are attending events, that you are letting people know you have a GSA schedule. And to be able to have these, if you're at an OSDBU, to talk about your GSA contract number and to say, you know, which of your sub-agencies are primarily buying off of GSA schedule. So you want to make sure that you are targeting an agency that's using the GSA schedule. A good example of that is that the Navy has their own IT vehicle. It's called C40. And the Navy doesn't buy IT off of the multiple award schedule typically at all. So if I am an IT company and I know I want to target the Navy, I hope I've done my research, because I might have the ability to get awarded a GSA schedule contract, but ultimately I need someone, either I need to be on C4 or I need a teammate that has access to that vehicle. There is no one answer to federal procurement, but the goal, once we've gotten on this GSA schedule, is to push as much business as we can through it. So these are the types of ways, certainly the compliance things to think about. And I want to give you a second if you have any further questions. My contact information was on slide 2 or 3 of this. You're certainly welcome to contact me and ask some questions moving forward. If you have questions about consolidation, questions about the regulations of transactional data reporting as it opens later this year. But I hope I have given you some things to think about and helpful ways to be able to better utilize your awarded GSA schedule contract.
Thank you so much, Courtney, for an excellent presentation. So yes, we do literally have 2 minutes left if you have any questions. We have one that says, can you explain about the 25,000 requirement, I guess, is that dollar, of the GSA schedule?
Right. So GSA terms and conditions say that you have to do $25,000 of sales in the first 2 years, and then every year thereafter. When you report less than that in the sales reporting system, you will automatically get a contract cancellation from the eMod system saying that you have not met the sales requirements and your contract is being canceled. You have 30 days to respond to that. And you would be able to once or twice talk about what you're doing to market. They're not particularly strict to begin with in the initial 5-year period. If you get to the end of your 5 years and you've made no sales, they will not extend your contract. Right now, there's a moratorium on that requirement. Because of COVID, through September of this year, they have not actually canceled anyone's contract for lack of sales. I think that's going to come back into play next year. So make sure that you are working to be able to at least show that you're putting in quotes, that you are doing things to market, even if you have not been successful.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. When is the best time to discuss rate adjustments during the 2-year rate certification window?
There are, as I mentioned earlier, there's 3 ways to raise your prices, and you set the economic price adjustment clause associated with your contract in your final proposal revision letter. So likely it's every 5 years if you set 5 years of pricing initially. It's every year if you, based on a commercial price list or are using a market indicator. And right now, because of inflation, if you intend to put in an ancillary economic price adjustment, then I would start having that conversation with your contracting officer right away. The only time you can't do an adjustment yet is your first year on contract. Your first 12 months on contract, anything that you put on schedule has to stay at that price and cannot be escalated for 12 months.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Courtney, for a fantastic presentation. And of course, you can go to Courtney's website for further information on the services she offers. And thank you all to the audience for great questions. And don't forget, your PTAC counselor is also waiting to assist you on government contracting. So get in touch with them. And we hope to see you at a future PTAC event. Thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Yasmin. Have a good day.